Well, I don't have to give our guest speaker, fellow lecturer, any introduction today, do I? So, without further ado, I'd like to give a warm welcome and applaud to our wonderful Johnathan Leng.
Good afternoon, everybody. If you want to stop me at any point to ask any questions, that's fine. I've no problem with that. I'm going to be using my website, but I would also like us to look at prints as well, because I feel the process of handling print is really important. I think presentations done on screen, I think we all get frustrated by looking at images on screen, and they can all look different every screen you put them on. And so I think by actually, I'm a photographer, I print things out. I spend a lot of time and effort printing things out, so by handling the prints, I think it would be a better process than looking at them on screen. Okay, so preparing for this, I had to write a bit of a piece about this talk. And you find yourself writing things and think, does that apply to my work? And you guys will be doing it all the time. You'll be thinking about how theory influences your work, and I find myself thinking, is that coming across? Is the theory that I'm attaching, that I'm saying my work's influenced by, is that really, can you see it in my work? And I don't know if you can or not. I think it's taken quite a long time since being a student to this period to think, well, do you know what? I'm not overly bothered what people think anymore, because nobody can think your personal thoughts. So everybody's going to perceive something different. So when I write about things like history and identity, well, if you're a photographer, how can you be dealing in anything else, really? Especially identity, because you're a person you're a photographer who's taking his own photographs. So I think one of the reasons I put history in there is a lot of these projects, the first few that I'll introduce, one of them, the Monkbridge project, is it's where I served an apprenticeship. So it's very, very personal to me. I went round there during when the factory was being demolished and when it just closed, and walked around areas that I'd been a 16-year-old, just left school and gone around the area. So it's very personal to me, so the personal memories. But how do you portray those personal memories in an image? I feel it's impossible, really, because nobody's going to have that experience. What I've got the pleasure of doing now is to talk through some of those memories, to talk through some of those stories. But for you to look at these images, that's not going to come across to you without me illustrating them or talking about them. Does that make sense to people? Okay, so I'm going to start off. The first project I want us to look at is the Doorstep project. This is the oldest finished sort of project. So I did this, I think, in 2009. So it was actually 4 years after the July the 7th bombings. So when I talk about history, the July the 7th bombings were history then. Now, the reason I started to do this project is that I lived literally a stone's throw away from these three bombers. And at the time, when they'd actually found that the people lived in Beeston and were from Leeds and went down to London and released the bombs and what have you, all media attention turned to streets that I walked down the shop to get milk from, and it was a really strange experience. And obviously, being a photographer, I followed the vans around, and when I was around, I followed the vans around, and I was listening to the interviews, and I was looking at the people that they were interviewing, and they weren't interviewing the people that I knew. They weren't interviewing family people. They were interviewing people who gave a story, who sort of reaffirmed people's belief in a certain area. And I got really annoyed at that. And I let it lie for a bit because I thought I can't really produce a documentary project so close to the event happening without it being really influenced. So what I wanted to do was to go back afterwards and see how many people were actually felt strongly about it, or felt as strongly about it as I did, because I had a good feeling about the area. I've not lived in Beeston all my life. I've moved there, and you hear horror stories about the area and all sorts of stuff. But there's genuinely a community spirit there, and people who live there can see, I suppose, that there's dodgy bits of it, but they want their bit to be good, want to bring the children up in a nice area, or want to retire or whatever, in a good area, they feel about their area. And I thought I would like some way to be able to photograph these people. So I gave it quite a bit of thought, and I thought most people use the supermarket in Beeston. So I put a little advert up in the supermarket and said, basically, anybody who felt strongly about what had happened and the way Beeston was portrayed, would you come forward? And these are the people that came forward. And I think I do like how they're displayed in the grid on the website, and I do like it's very much done in the style of the Beckers, where as much as I could, everything looked the same. And I feel obviously by doing that, you start to look for differences. So when I go through them, just briefly, doorstep. I called it the doorstep project. So the doorstep's a metaphor of letting somebody in. So everybody stood on the doorstep, and it's to let people into the house. An open door, which I felt sort of portrayed the area and the community spirit really. And you just start looking for, what I like about it is you start looking for the differences and how people decorate the houses and how they stand and how comfortable they feel in the images. These were, I shot them on film, but I shot them digitally as well. Not all the films came out. Some of them were underexposed, and it was the only time I could photograph these people, so a couple of them moved away partway through the project. So I say fortunately, I backed it up, I shot it on film and digital just in case, and as it happened, it worked out quite well that I shot it on digital and I could produce these images digitally as well as on film, or else I wouldn't have had the people who came forward. But this image, this is Sean, who I shot this on film on a 6.6 camera, so a camera that was on a tripod, and you look down into, I don't know how many people have used that sort of camera, but for portraits it's absolutely fantastic because you've not got the camera to your face. It's down at your waist, you can pre-focus it, you can look down into your viewfinder, and you can look at the person you're photographing. So I think equipment's really important as well. I love cameras and I love using them, and I think this project more than anything made me realise how much of an influence over the images the equipment you use has, because I shot the first ones on film on 6.6 and I was speaking to him and he was stood there quite normally. Then I picked up a digital camera with a 24-70 lens and a big camera, put it to my face, and the first thing that he did was to bar the doorway. So you can see that he's got one leg at the bottom and an arm on top. And I was like a paparazzi, and he instantly did that. And it just struck a chord with me straight away that it became defensive with the camera like that. And that's what really has made me go on to use film and all the cameras after this, because in a way it opens doors. again, literally, it doesn't close doors, I suppose, because people are either interested in what equipment you're using, or you can have eye contact with them. If you want to be sort of like surreptitious about it, with a camera like that, you can snap away really without anybody even seeing. So, to progress this, I had a real range of people which I was really pleased about. It wasn't just couples or young families or single guys, Asian guy at the shop that we go to. Sean came forward, single lady, retired lady, and I mean, I love this one. She looks so proud of the house, and you just wonder why she needs 3 number 20s on the wall. But her house is beautiful, really decorated nicely with flowers, and you could just tell that you could understand why she came forward, and not necessarily why some of the other people came forward. Anyway, I wanted to progress the project on, so I got an exhibition in a local gallery in and around sort of Beeston area to show these, but I wanted something to accompany it. So because, as you can see in all the images, it's brickwork, and where I live, it's bricks everywhere, which I'll speak about afterwards. I thought I'll try and create it in sort of a book, but in like a brick. So I got this bound, there's a bookbinders in Headingley. They made this sort of mini book, this inside, and then I thought what's important about the area that I live in, it's terrace streets, terrace houses. So
Wow.
I just joined them together and displayed it like that. And I think I've done a degree, I've done a master's, and a master's you get so much, you've got to do so much stuff for this. Right, you've got your images, what are you going to do with it now? Where are you going to go with it now? And it's a bind. Believe me, when you're doing it, it's really hard, because you work hard on doing your images, and then you keep getting pushed. And a lot of people I've spoken to have not taken photography up afterwards. It's taken them years to take photographs after doing a master's, because they push you so much. But if I'd have not been pushed, I'd have never come up with an idea like this. I'd have been happy to just produce prints, because that's what I enjoy doing. But it makes you progress things, and it pushes you. So as students, you should be thinking of these opportunities all the time. How can I display my work? We're so lucky here with the facilities. You can print on ceramics, you can print 3D, you can go into screen printing like Jackson up there. There's so many ways to output your work. It shouldn't just stick with print. So that's the doorstep project. The next one, that I suppose is still ongoing really, and this is the Monkbridge project, which is a place on Whitehall Road in Leeds, which leads up to the train station. It was one of the biggest employers in Leeds, a big engineering site that started off making train wheels in the 18th century, up to when I worked there, they made parts for Concorde. So it's been fairly cutting edge engineering. But whilst I was working there, there was sort of a cloud hung over it, knowing that it was near the city centre and there was a price on the land. You always knew that when that price was more than what the company could make, they'd be off, they'd move somewhere else. And after I left, it was decided that the site was worth more than what they could make. So a couple of friends were still working there at the time. So before it closed, I went round and photographed it. And I've shot on this, I've shot maybe 70 or 80 rolls of film, 12 images per roll. I've got a lot of images for this, and the first, if you want, I don't know how many people can gather around, but the first sort of images, you just snap away, I find. I don't know what other photographers find, but you snap away, you get the impetus of doing a project, and then you think, right, I'm here, and you see one or two shots, and then you start taking the same shot, and then you get your films processed, and that excitement from shooting them tends to diminish a little bit when you look through your prints. So you go back again, and it's all about that process of going back and forcing to look at things differently. What I can do is, if we can gather around, I can start showing some prints. So,
how many times did you do that?
oh, 20, about, and you become more and more disciplined. You look, by going back more and more often, you look for different things, and you start looking at your work, and you find that you're getting one sort of photograph, and then you try and tell yourself, well, no, I've got loads of those. I want to start getting different types. So I'll just put a few together here. But the beauty of that is, when you do get an exhibition, depending on the space, you can start telling a story. Yeah. So I think these were the first few films that I'd shot. So there's still signs. This is before they played it out. And there's all the old tooling there, all the machinery is still there. It was really quite poignant for me, because I'd basically grown up here. And I went from a 16-year-old school kid to being 23 when I left, and grown up a lot, and it was really quite sad at times. But what it also made me realise is that photographs like this mean so much to me, but might mean nothing to anybody else. And there's nothing you can do about that. But the reason I like this is that there was a guy, can you see the photograph of the Rolf Harris? The painting. There's a guy who, when he walked, bounced up and down. Everybody used to call him Kangaroo. So then, when it was his other shift, somebody then paints Rolf Harris looking like a kangaroo, and it's all those stories. Like, there's a picture on there there's a writing on there that says "Fitters Break." Now, they had to switch this off before the machine started turning. Anyway, somebody forgot to switch that off. The machine set on fire, and it caused tens of thousands of pounds of damage. But that's never going to come across to anybody else. But what I've tried to do in these is to show signs of that people worked there. So I tried to put a human element in there. Images like that. I don't know if this is that's on screen. So that's a sink that I used to have to wash my hands in every day. And Sunday had got annoyed and flung all his tools in this sink because he'd been told to do something he didn't want to do. It bent all the sink, and then used a little bit of wood that stayed in there for about 7 years to prop the sink up, and things like that. When you work in there, you don't realise it means nothing to you, but then afterwards you think, oh my God, and then there's one really quite, I don't know if I put it in, there's one really quite sad one really, that one of the guys emptying out his drawer on the last day, and there's all these bits of chewing. Every time he had a packet of chewing gum, he kept the little, your last bit of chewing gum. Yeah. The bit of packet round it. He kept that in his cupboard. And on the last day he emptied it out, and there must have been like 400 or 500 little bits of paper on the floor with chewing gum. And you think, that to me was an indication of the repetitiveness of the job that he was doing. It was a really boring job. Another place I worked, the guy used to get an apple every day and stick the sticker from the apple on the board in front of him where he worked. So there were hundreds of these stickers on he had to look at when he went to his bench to grind metal, and you think, why would you put yourself through that? But that's the sort of thing that I suppose I wanted to get away from. I wanted to get away from working in the engineering side. Unfortunately, I got made redundant and took up my passion in photography. But this photograph's this was when I went round where everybody, I mean, this is where I used to eat the lunch. That photograph, if you look at, you won't be able to see the newspapers, but the newspapers, you can tell what day it shut, because they were the newspapers went up to that day and then they were left. So I find that's quite poignant as well. But as well as, one of the reasons I brought these prints in is that if you shoot on film, or if you shoot digitally, I feel that printing things out is a lot better than looking at them, like I said earlier, looking at them on screen. Because on screen you can't touch them, you can't move them around easily. So say when I'm putting an exhibition together, I'll shuffle them around and see what fits next to each other, and you start to get different themes coming through. What works well, what doesn't work well. Break these down to sort of, some are detailed shots, some are, I suppose, establishing shots. And it's getting the balance right, and when you're seeing things on the wall, it's getting the flow. I don't know about your end of year shows, how many prints will you be having on the wall? So, yeah. So it's not many, but I mean here it's even less. I always feel it's a bit sad really that you only have a couple here, because for photography you should be telling a story, and the more the better really. And that discipline, putting a project together and putting them on the wall, it's hard to learn really. So all these. So some of these are digital prints. The one that are discoloured, me being a cheapskate and buying cheap colour paper, and if you buy cheap colour paper that's not been refrigerated, after not so long it discolours. But these, the colour prints are hand printed, but we've not got that facility here anymore, or we've not got that facility to print colour. So I've had to go around another way and scan my film in, or get little prints. But having working prints is really important, ones that are probably not as high quality, but ones that you've got to hand all the time and to look at. And finding a cheap method is really important to do that, because you do need to print them out. And finding a way around getting working prints, I feel, is quite important. So I said this is an ongoing project. All these that you're looking at now are when it was either just knocked down or in the process of being knocked down. After that, I started using a 5.4 camera with a 6x12 back. No, not that one, similar to that one. So it was a Raleigh 6.6, yeah. I started using a large format camera with a roll back, and these images are 6 centimetres by 12. And it's I think it's similar to, is it CinemaScope, or is that 617? Anyway, it's that sort of view, and I just wanted the discipline of using a different format really, just to try it out, and it's quite a hard format to use, which end up putting things in the middle. And like when you use a square, the thing that you can't do is put things in the middle because it looks boring. So by using this 6:12 format, I was just sort of forcing myself to see things differently.
What camera was it?
It was an MPP camera, but you know, like we've got the digital backs in college that you use. This was a film back that you attached to the back of it, and that was the sort of size of the image. That's 5:4. I did use 5:4 a bit, but I find it a little bit slow at times. But these were all trying different formats out, and I'm quite happy with some of the images. I do like that one, and that sort of format, that 6:12 format, I think works quite well. But at the time, the site was pretty much it had been knocked down at the time, and there wasn't much to photograph. So for quite a long time I didn't photograph it, and recently I went back and I've shot some black and white stuff. But again, I don't feel it's overgrown now. I don't feel I'm getting it. And I think, looking at these, I shot half a dozen rolls of film and I don't think I'm getting it there really. So what I'm going to do next, the Yorkshire Post have moved in there. So I'm going to go around the Yorkshire Post building and hopefully photograph the people in there. But also I might take some people who used to work there and take them back and get them, probably photograph them in situ again and photograph some people there. But I can see this is one of those projects that's going to go on and on for me, and because it's on my doorstep, it's quite handy to be able to just go down, and I'm quite friendly with the people who run it.
He's put the black and white.
Yeah, the black and white ones. So that's the Mungrave project. The Morris project.
Before you go on to that, Jonathan, you were saying that you found 5/4 slow, but you were talking about using the 5/4 with roll film back attached. How was 5/4 on its own slower than with the film back?
Well, they were both slow. I couldn't quite get to. I just wasn't feeling it, for want of a better phrase, really. It just wasn't there. I'm not saying it's not something I'll go back to, but for that sort of work, I just wasn't getting it really. Which made me go back to the square, and I think I really love using square. It's not easy to use. And you've got to force yourself, when you look through the viewfinder, you have to force yourself to position things differently up, and I call it working the square. A bit conceited, but and you look for different angles, you try and put things in different places. The reason I did the Morris project is that I'd gone out on a Christmas do from here, and we've gone to it's not the Bell, is it? What's the pub in the bottom where the mummers come round?
Yeah, that is the Bell.
Is it?
Yeah.
These guys called the mummers came round, and I've never seen anything like this before, being a city boy. But the lads who were with, the staff from here, were like, oh God, yeah, it's them again, and pretty much ignored it. And they put on this amazing play in the pub. I thought, what is this? And somebody pretends to be...
It was in the Hales Bar.
Hales Bar, yeah, right. Somebody pretends to die, and then they bring them back to life, and and then they pass the hat round to get money to buy them all drinks. When I read into it, it's like a traditional play that the farmlands used to do over the winter to get a bit of extra money in, because they didn't have anything, they couldn't really earn any money from ploughing and stuff through the winter. And if you didn't give them any money, they'd threaten to plough your garden up or plough your... So it's basically sort of begging, more than want of a better phrase, but it was a tradition that I kept going in it, and I thought, I'd seen Morris dancing and found it sort of slightly ridiculous really, but when you realise these people go out there and do that, and these are really keeping history alive. The mummers play has been, it's not written down, it's passed down orally, and lots of different areas in Yorkshire have got a different tradition on it and have different takes on it. But the Morris dancing, the more I looked at it, the more I enjoyed it, because these guys are really passionate. I think for them to go out and to be virtual laughing stock a lot of the time, they're not bothered as long as they've got the pint of beer and they can get up and have a dance. And I think that's admirable, really. I love it that people are passionate enough to go out there and do this sort of thing and not really care what anybody thinks about them. And I think there isn't enough of that in society, and I think we should be celebrating this.
Are they connected to a part of the Mayday, the Mayday dancing? Is that part of it?
From what I've read of it, it's really difficult to trace the steps. It's mentioned in Shakespeare, and the Morris might come from Moorish, as in the Moors of Africa.
Right.
But even then, it's only a tradition that these guys came to the English courts and did strange dancing. It's not that they were copying them. And there's no link between, have you seen some of the Morris dancers who black up?
Yeah.
There's no real link with that either. A lot of the blacking up is to hide their identity.
Yeah.
And people find it offensive, but what you've got to realise is that there's people in Africa who white up. There's tribesmen who white up again to hide their identity,
Yeah.
so there are parallels there. And the reason these guys blacked up was to stop the church from sort of wagging a finger at them when they were out dancing and having a good time on Sundays. But what I liked about it is that each town or each village, village, had their own outfits and had their own dance. So you look at something like this. This was done in York. I think these are Czech Morris dancers, and these are actually sword dancers. So again, I'm varying the sort of pictures that I'm taking. Some are sort of action shots, some are detail shots. This was at 9:30 in the morning, and I think he had 2 tankards of beer. This one was called a trissing tree, which I had to go into some woods in Derbyshire somewhere. It was really quite scary. It was pitch black, and I sort of knew what was going to happen. I knew it was going to be dark and stuff, and I'd taken lights and I'd taken radio triggers, and for this I was using this camera. And it didn't go right all the time, but I fortunately got 2 shots. But in situations like that, it comes around once a year, and you're really lucky with something that hit and miss as film. You're not sure if it's going to work and what have you. It's really exciting. It brought my excitement back into photography. And I think at the time, we just got, me and Lindsay, my wife, we just had, I think they got 2 kids at the time. And the Morris dancing thing fitted in really well, because I could do it at the weekend. I could take the family and kids, I could take my wife and kids with me, because it was generally in fairly nice places where they'd want to go out and have a cream tea or something like that, and I could then photograph the Morris dancers. Or a lot of it was at night and they'd gone to bed, so it was fitting it in around what I was doing as well, which I'm sure for you older ones, there's that balance of your life and being a photographer, which I'll talk about on the last project. This was on May Day, up on Ilkley Moor, and they have a tradition of seeing the sun up coming up on May Day. Again, this is a similar sort of thing I did with the flash, and I got maybe half a dozen really cracking pictures here. But the thing is, they were the same people in the same situation, so when it came to putting an exhibition together, you can't put 6 of your favourite pictures, 6 of your best pictures in, so you've got to be able to edit them out. Let me see if I can find the other.
What was that?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
It was.
I've got those in there as well, and I think I had half a dozen that I could have put in there. But a lot of the time, when you're putting an exhibition together, you've got to drop your favourite pictures for the flow of what you're putting up there and editing them together. I'll go back to some of these. So when I talk about history and identity. To me, Morris dancing, you think it's stuck in tradition, but you only have to look at something like this, that they've then gone and he's embroidered that on the back of his outfit. And that's nothing to do with tradition. That's what he's wanting to put on there, so it's always changing. I don't know enough about the dancing to see their interpretations of it, but the dancing isn't static either, that changes. And I suppose photography is really good at showing that, at freezing that moment.
What's
And-
one?
What's that? Yeah, what is that about? I don't know. Why he was dressed up like that, I don't know. Oh, yeah.
It's the clean one, isn't it? The spongy thing is.
So the toilet plunger thing.
But one of the things I like to do is, I've taken half a dozen of this guy. I've taken probably a full roll of film of this guy from all different angles.
Well,
But that's the one I chose because it's not obvious. It takes. So Sarah's saying, hey, and if you look at it for a few seconds, you can see that that's no lady's hand. So by putting things in it and making the viewer work, I think that's what you've got to do as well. You have to make them fairly interesting and make the viewer find the clues that you put in there. That's what I try to do. And the thing, when you're onto a project like this, sometimes you feel you're blessed when
with Alex gone.
yeah. Do you know what I mean? You think, I've got my camera, there's these guys dancing. It's just great. And again, I've taken loads of pictures of these, but I've tried to keep the clues to the minimum and show the shoes. I know you can't see overly well on here.
So that's how they get upstairs, is it?
Yeah. So they've got Morris dancing clogs on with feathers. And that's all I wanted to show, really. I wanted to keep it fairly intriguing. These guys are fantastic. These are from Backup. They get dressed up, and I can't remember if it's May Day or Easter. That's them as well. So these guys get blacked up, wear turbans, and some people have been quite think it's quite offensive, really. But what you might not be able to. I don't know if I've got the other image on here. Yeah. So people think it's offensive, but when you know about the history of them, it isn't. The reason they're blacked up is that the miners, they were all miners, and there's a mining tradition in Backup bit. And can you see they've got wooden things on the waist and on the knees? They're called nuts, and they used to put them on the knees and their elbows, and when they were mining, they crawled on those to stop their arms and knees hurting. And again, they blacked themselves up because that's what they used to look like when they came out of the mine. The garlands are something that are used in all Morris dancing, and they look like black smurfs when you see them walking. You don't have to speak to them for 5 minutes. They're absolutely crazy, these guys. But again, it's just great that there's these people in the village that are like that, and they're the heart and soul of the village, because over Easter, I think it is, there's a massive pub crawl. They go into every pub, and the whole village follows them. I said the whole village, lots of people follow them from pub to pub, and it's become sort of quite a big spectacle now. People going over and photographing and looking at them, and it's just just one of those one of those things that's very British that I feel we should celebrate. Really. Okay. I think finally, you can have a look through the prints. If you want to stop afterwards, you can do that. But I'll go on to the final one. And this is my most recent project, and it's an ongoing project. I've sent one of the prints off to, I got one in the Ferrens Gallery in Hull, which was an open show. I've got that one in. And this week as well, I sent it off to the Royal Academy for their summer exhibition, and I've been shortlisted for the second shortlisting. So fingers crossed that'll go in there. But that'll be fantastic. It was Adam who told me to do that, and if you're not in it, you don't win it, I suppose. And I don't tend to do that sort of thing and send things off. But I think after sending it off to Ferrens in Hull, and it being received really well there, I'll just have a go and put that one in as well. But I mentioned earlier that where I live, it's all bricks and it's terraced houses. When I look out my window, it's those sort of angular views that I see. And somebody explained to me when I first started photography, I was still working in engineering, and he says, as an engineer, you always see things in straight lines. And that's always stayed with me. And for a long time, I thought, God, I'm taking the same photograph. It's the same photograph all the time. And when you go to somewhere like Umbridge and you're doing lots of pictures, you can't help but take the same photograph. But with this, I've gone with it. And the reason I've called it Bat and Ball is that I come from a really sporty family. I'm rubbish at it. I love it. I love sport. I'd have absolutely loved to have been good at sport. But I try too hard, and in sport you can't try hard. It just doesn't work. But this is what I do. I'm a photographer, and this is, I suppose, celebrating it. And these are all personal pictures that were all taken. For every one of these, there must be 50 of my kids. So these are those snatched moments when I've had a chance to turn around and take a picture, and the kids haven't been running on the road or jumping off a high wall or something like that. So it's just been one of those chances to take those photographs, and I've gone through them. And it's something I feel that's sort of quite special come together, that what I feared at one time, the same sort of composition, really works together. And what I've wanted to do with this project is to get a rhythm going up. I'm not overly bothered about subject matter. It's more about the aesthetics of the image and a rhythm going through. And I got these I put some working prints together. And my printer started running out of ink, and it printed them really lightly. I thought, do you know what? I'm going to stick with that. I don't like. I've gone off heavy prints, so ones with really strong blacks and bright whites, and I wanted those muted tones. And through an accident on the printer, that's what I've got. So these are the working prints that I've had round my desk, round my computer for a couple of months now. And what I've been I've put these together because to me these were the ones that went together. So that one goes first, and it relates to that by a shape, and that is it.
Right.
It doesn't matter that that's in Craster on my holidays, and that's from Spain, that's in Spain, at the roof in the airport on the holidays. They're just tied together by shape. And I said at the beginning, people are never going to experience what I experienced when I took the photograph. So for me, this is quite a big thing. My photography is normally going to a place and phoning somebody up, arranging a date to go there, and that whole organising of it's exciting in itself because there's a real sense of achievement there, that you do all that. But this is very different. These are images I like to take, and tying them together with something just through shape. And I suppose with being a father and being a dad and being able to do those photographs in those snatched moments, really, that's enough to tie them together for me, I think. But I put them together through shapes, and they got a bit boring, and then I started looking through my negatives again. And I thought I could say so much more with these images. And started including things like this, to break up that rhythm and to also make like a link between them. And it's a bit more ambiguous, and I think putting that ambiguity into it again makes it interesting for people. And things that I've never printed before, like just that are out of focus, and I think, well, does it matter? Does it fit in with the rhythm of the images and how I want to edit it?
Where's that?
I think that's in France. But these were all taken on this £15 eBay camera that has got duct tape. I was mentioning duct tape, Chris, earlier. They're stuck together with duct tape to stop the bellows leaking. And it's a joy to use. If you can get hold of one of these, get yourself to a camera fair and get one of these, because it's made my photography so much better than you.
Is it like price of it?
Yeah, the lenses are lovely. They're quite simple lenses, just a 3-element lens that gives a real softness. When it's nice and bright, you get really sharp images. But so something like that on a really bright sunny day, that's sharp from front to back. It's as sharp as anything that I've got. But when you're using it wide open, for instance like f4.5, there's not very much in focus, but there's a really nice softness to it. The reason I like this is it's a folder, it'll go in your pocket, you just pull it out, and you have to gauge the distances. So I like that, it's testing me all the time, that I'll set the distance on here, and then I'll think, right, I'm about 8 feet away, and then snap. And I think that's what photography is about. It doesn't have to be about a digital camera that's got dozens of flashing lights in the viewfinder that are telling you this, that and the other, that's virtually impossible to teach people because there's so many different things going on. It's simple and easy, and it makes you look at the light and think, oh, it's got a bit lighter now, I'll open it up a couple of stops. And just thinking like that, you've got, even though I'm not taking pictures all the time, I'm concentrating on the light, concentrating on composition, and it just brings a different element to it. It's a bit geeky, but again, I am a photographer, I love using it. They're nice objects, they're heavy, it's nice to hold. And
what is that?
That's a knife for isolate.
Oh,
They do.
in English?
Well, I can't, it's a German camera.
Oh, right. Can you spell it then, please?
I'll let you have a look.
Yeah, what?
So, they're all taken on those, and then I'm getting to a point now where I'm going to start showing the exhibition. So I wanted to show you, again we're looking here with the darkroom that we've got. I've used half a dozen different types of paper. So these are all different types, that's got different toning on it. I've experimented with just cropping them without any border. Do I want really dark shadows on there? I've got lots of different types of paper and all sorts of stuff. And I've decided on some matte paper, and this is fixed grade paper that I've not used before. So I've thought it's very different using fixed grade paper. But what I feel is it'll be easier to get that softer look which I got from those inkjet prints, and that's the softer look that I'm going to go for. Not really deep dark shadows. There's still a black in there, but a really nice soft overall look to it. And then on top of that, just finalises things before you start buying lots of paper, how I'm going to tone them. So what I do is I would get print, I print extra on purpose, and then I've cut those in two. These are selenium toned, and one's for 2 minutes, one's for 4.5 minutes. I see which ones I like, and it's really easy to compare them together like that. And I'm getting to a point now. I'm getting to a point now where I can go out, buy my stock of paper, buy my dev, buy the toner, and I'm going to be ready to print everything and do it for the minimum cost, really. So this is going to be the next one that I hopefully get out there. And the first place I'll take it is to Dean Clough, which is a gallery in Halifax. And Dean Clough have got they promote local artists. So the Morris Dancing pictures, I had an exhibition there. The guy there loved them, and he's still working there, luckily. He commissions the exhibitions, he loved them, and obviously that's the first port of call that I'll go. But now that I've got the picture in Ferrens, and I've got the other picture in Fingers Crossed in the Royal Academy summer show, it's all things to add to it. That when you, because they always ask for a CV and stuff, it's all things to put into your CV that gives credibility to your work. So things like competitions you need to enter. You guys should be doing that all the time, because it's always adding to your career. It's always good for your career.
Did you use Oral on this developer?
It's all stuff we've got in, yeah. So, I mean, obviously I've got an interest in the different types of developer and all that sort of stuff. And I have a play about with it, and then when you guys want to use it, you can then gain on our experience, really. Right, I think, is that okay? I think that's it. Has anybody got any questions?
I'll say something that it's really good to John to show his work like that. It's really fantastic. And I particularly love the Morris dancing, because I think we've got it
Yeah, I do.
really nailed, because it is such a ancient, traditional, can be looked at as quite quaint kind of thing going on. But you've done it as Johnathan Leng.
Yeah.
That's what I really liked about it. And I remember when you were selecting your edits, this is really important, Michael. It's very important for everybody to understand that we're in this lovely collective in this art school here, where you can bounce ideas, you can get opinions from people. And I was very honoured that Johnathan came to me to just help him with some final selections of what you do. Because when you're looking at your own stuff, like you know, some of these are going to be my best ones, and I have to reject them myself. How the hell am I going to do that? Okay?
Yeah.
And there was, and I remember there was a shot which you would say is the quintessential Morris dancing shot. Was sort of half drunk packed beers, village greens thing. You know, perfect, spot. You know, if you're going to send someone out and go and get a picture of Morris dancing that sums it up, boom. And then there was another one, and we were trying to decide between the two, out of a guy with a bin bag, a carrier bag from the supermarket. And I said, Johnathan, that's you.
Yeah.
The carrier bag, okay? And, you know, we kind of agreed with that. You could not fault this as a shot, but you need that help from people to stand back and being able to, you know, really positively create your work, you know. That's really positive.
It's the hardest thing to do, because you get so attached to it, but once you can get people accept what people say. And
You can also
realise
do
it's
that.
only it's only their opinion. Yeah.
So you talked about doing your MA, and I know from experience you are very, very knowledgeable when it comes to colour. You've done colour printing yourself.
Yeah.
Obviously, you've invested a lot of time in colour printing and expertise with, but you've chosen to do this latest project spending money.
Yeah, it's cheaper.
Exactly.
It is, but also I can get involved in work. I can get back involved in the darkroom,
Right.
and I can buy this pyro developer that was developed in 1860, and I can have a go at it myself, as opposed to reading about it.
Right.
And you can read so much about. There's so much stuff available out there, and they're bringing out new stuff and they're reissuing old things. But you've got to have a go at it yourself. And it's just really nice being able to do a black and white again. Do it slightly different, get a different style, and have that different style in my head, and go out there and do that.
I think black and white photography also makes you think more about the light, even if it's still a subconscious
Yeah,
thought process than colour does. I don't know why, because you're getting starker tonal contrast in black and white than you are in
Well,
colour.
it's like you said, you want to focus on the aesthetics, don't you?
Yeah.
And, I suppose that lends itself quite well, because you're not distracted by saturated colours or
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay. Any more questions? Right, well, with the absence of Heidi, because she's had to go to the meeting, thank you very much, John.
Thank you.